Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the Managing Director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. In this video today we're going to be discussing what's called the fraud referral sheet. Now this is an internal document that is used by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service when basically they are reviewing cases. They use this as a sort of a worksheet to identify possible red flags which may signal some sort of fraud or misrepresentation could be occurring within a given case. So just to read through this, General Behavioral Fraud Indicators Guide. So this is sort of in a physical sense in terms of like being interviewed, some things that are going to set off red flags with respect to an interviewing officer. Extreme nervousness, over-interaction, lack of knowledge about basic questions, late for interview, answers prompted by attorney or other, lack of interest interaction, eye contact, evasive or general answers, answers interrupted by attorney or other, attorney attempted to distract/mislead. I find it interesting that over-interaction is one general indicator of possible fraud, while lack of interest in interaction is also an indicator. So what is this telling us? What it's telling us is, look, these officers need to be able to tick a box or provide a quick reference to what they perceived as a possible red flag denoting possible fraud. So, you know, in one instance, you may have somebody who just sits there and stands completely mute, and they'll say, well, look, we think something's a little fishy, because they won't say a word. And then you've got another person who goes on like a chatterbox, and it seems, again, it seems fishy, I guess. This, so while on one hand, when reading this, just the plain text, it may not seem to make any sense or be a little bit, oh, I don't know, almost paradoxical. But when you get into a real-world setting, you understand that these generally are used for practical purposes. They need to be able to just quickly tick a box and move on. Other general fraud indicators: documents issued immediately before interview, documents issued immediately after interview, over submissions, proactive, explicit, staged photographs, suspect tax filing, financial transactions, multiple applications, petitions by single applicant petitioner, common preparer known or suspected to be under investigation, preparer and notary are the same thing, are the same person. A tip letter, a tip-off can obviously lead them to suspect them some things. Suspect documents, photographic evidence suggests imposter, biometric discrepancies, denied for abandonment or withdrawal after request for evidence issued, suspicious filing history or beneficiary applicant. An interesting one to me is the one involving suspect tax filings, financial transactions, and proactive, explicit, staged photographs. A lot of clients ask me about photographic evidence, especially within the context of like a K-1 fiance visa, and while they're good, going too far overboard to sort of stage photographs is not a good idea for exactly this reason here. Another thing that I see a lot happen, especially with parties where the petitioner will live abroad, will have been living abroad for a significant period of time and won't have been earning any income or earn minimal income, and they haven't filed their taxes. We usually end up having to do a back filing of their taxes anyway, or in some cases we do. In those cases, it's interesting because we do get a quick delay. We get a delay, I think, because the officers in question want to just do a further review into the overall case, again, because the documents were issued, as noted, issued immediately before interview. You know, you'll see the filing date on people's tax returns. They'll be like 3 days before the visa interview. Well, it wasn't done out of any kind of nefarious intention. However, for practical purposes, yeah, the tax filing just happened to occur pretty quickly before the visa interview. In those cases, I sometimes see where administrative processing may kick in, and the officer just wants to have, you know, I think they're just looking to have an extra quick look over the entire case file to make sure there isn't anything overly suspect, because one of these red flags was triggered. Now, specific to I-130s, and I-130s are the forms that pertain to U.S. marriage visas, and they're similar to the forms used for fiancé visas. So in family-based petitions, fraud indicators guide, again from this fraud referral worksheet. Short time between entry and marriage, that's for cases involving where somebody comes in the United States on like a tourist visa and really quickly thereafter gets married to their American spouse and files for immigrant visa benefits. There's another video on this channel which specifically discusses the 30-60-90 rule and the new rule that's been put in to take its place, the 90-day rule. That will kind of more specifically talk to that issue. Unusual marriage history, children born during marriage to other parent, unusual number of children and large discrepancy in age, unusual dates on submitted documents, divorce, new marriage dates close. You'll see that can happen. Honestly, that happens more frequently in fiancé visa cases where literally, they'll be waiting around for the finalized decree of divorce, which in certain states can take a little while, depending on the caseload of the various courts or just the laws of the various states. We will actually often see a divorce which occurs like shortly before the filing of like a fiancé visa case, although it can happen with respect to marriage visa cases as well. In those cases, we generally, I usually provide some form of a cover letter explaining the situation. Unusual or large age discrepancy between spouses when found in conjunction with other indicators. So that in and of itself is not supposed to be a red flag in and of it per se, in and of itself, but it should be looked at in conjunction with other things. Age discrepancy is something people contact me about rather frequently. It is something that sometimes needs to be addressed in some of these cases, especially out here in Thailand, where yes, we do see age, a 10-year age difference between spouses is not that uncommon. However, I would argue a 10-year age difference between a 48-year-old and a 38-year-old, as far as maturity levels and things like that, it's not that big of a difference, in my opinion. And quite frankly, I think that most officers adjudicating these matters really do take the time to really ascertain what's going on in the case. They don't just look at an age difference and dismiss things out of hand just for that alone. Unusual associations between family members. This can happen rather frequently, especially where you see, especially in cases involving like lots of stepchildren and things like this, where some are getting, are trying to go to the U.S. and some are not. That can sometimes raise some red flags. Unusual cultural differences, low employment, financial status of the petitioner, always an issue. Petitioner's ability to support, utilizing the affidavit of support, which is discussed in another video on this channel, is always a major issue. Preparer, notary, and minister are the same person, so the person who married the people and filed their immigration stuff and notarized it all are the same person. Yeah, that's going to raise a few red flags. I'm not authorized to marry people, but I guess I could become a minister and start doing that in certain circumstances. I think that's relatively rare, but nonetheless, I think that would raise some red flags. Same employer of petitioner and beneficiary, I can see circumstances where that could raise some red flags. And previous marriages to foreign nationals. I don't think previous marriages to foreign nationals per se brings things up, but if someone has, 6 fiancé visa applications and they never actually married an individual, yeah, that 7th fiancé visa application I think is going to be more heavily scrutinized. So just to round this up and sort of what to take away from this video is there are indicators that are stipulated by Department of Homeland Security and USCIS with respect to red flags as to possible fraud in a given case. It's going to vary case by case. That being said, in many cases, these issues can be addressed. In some cases, the whole issue can be forestalled. But that being said, it's circumstantially dependent, and it's not a bad idea to contact a qualified legal representative to assist in these matters.